Child Guarantee Coordinator in Portugal and with support from the European Commission. My name is Stefan Jacobson. I'm a senior advisor at the OECD in the Public Governance Directorate, and we are working jointly with our colleagues in the WISE Directorate at the OECD on that. I have to inform everyone that the workshop will be recorded in Portuguese so that we can share it with people in the future. There is interpretation for the meeting, Portuguese, English, and it is displayed in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom window. Please keep your microphones muted when not speaking. Can everyone confirm that they can listen to the Portuguese translation? Okay, thank you. You will see also, if you have any questions, you can use the question and answer feature in the bottom right under the more indent in the bottom of your screen so that you can ask questions. Questions will be taken after the presentation and participants will be called individually to send their questions to the presenter. Camera and microphone should be switched on for the interaction so that we can actually see you. Now I would like to welcome our senior representatives to give their welcoming remarks. First, let me give the floor to Sonia Almeida, the National Coordinator of the Child Guarantee in Portugal. Sonia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Muito obrigada Stefan. Na sua pessoa, agradeço a toda a equipa, a todos os elementos da equipa da OCDE que têm, de uma forma muito próxima, trabalhado com a equipa da Coordenação Nacional da Garantia para a Infância no âmbito da realização deste projeto que nos traz aqui hoje a este workshop. Antes de mais nada, também agradecer, e como não poderia deixar de ser, à DG Reform, na pessoa do Florian Popa, que está também connosco aqui nesta mesa, como forma de, obviamente, este projeto inscreve-se num projeto de uma iniciativa da DG Reform de assistência técnica aos países, no sentido da construção de reformas, e, portanto, também tem, obviamente, acompanhado todo este processo com muita proximidade, e daí também o meu agradecimento. Dar as boas-vindas a todos aqueles que hoje aqui nos acompanham, acima de tudo também aos colegas que, de facto, aceitaram o nosso convite da Escócia para vir aqui partilhar connosco boas práticas relativamente àquilo que são os mecanismos de coordenação e de cooperação no âmbito das capacidades de acompanhamento ao nível local. Esta questão é uma questão muito importante para a garantia para a infância, para o plano de ação da garantia para a infância ao nível aqui em Portugal, concretamente, uma vez que, de facto, o plano de ação da garantia para a infância tem subjacente a implementação do modelo de governança que prevê uma participação muito ativa e uma participação de todas as entidades locais num trabalho muito importante de coordenação por parte dos municípios no âmbito do projeto da rede social, mas também com uma elevada de todas os parceiros. Eu peço desculpa, voltava a pedir às pessoas que entrem na reunião que desliguem os microfones, por favor. Muito obrigada. E, portanto, como eu estava a dizer, todos os parceiros que fazem parte dos Conselhos Locais de Ação Social. E, portanto, esta iniciativa hoje, no Dia Internacional da Erradicação da Pobreza, porque hoje é de facto este dia, é muito importante para nós estarmos a realizar este workshop que se dirige fundamentalmente a todas as pessoas que, de facto, localmente e na proximidade estão diretamente e diariamente a trabalhar junto das famílias com crianças mais vulneráveis. Nós temos feito uma trajetória, o plano de ação em Portugal foi aprovado em janeiro de 2023 e, portanto, de janeiro de 2023 até ao dia de hoje estão constituídos em Portugal 126 núcleos locais da garantia para a infância, já envolve mais de 900 pessoas, parceiros sociais de todas as áreas fundamentais da garantia para a infância. Falamos de saúde, falamos de educação, falamos de habitação, respostas de primeira infância, setor social e, portanto, a garantia para a infância já tem, de facto, uma rede nacional que envolve já muitas pessoas, muitos parceiros à volta, de facto, desta oportunidade de combatermos a pobreza infantil e promovermos uma efetiva igualdade de oportunidades. Aqui hoje, concretamente, vamos ter, de facto, aqui uma discussão à volta desta circunstância, de que forma é que a garantia para a infância pode aqui ser uma mais-valia no sentido de uma maior coordenação e de uma cooperação entre aquilo que são os vários níveis de governança, nomeadamente através daquilo que possa vir a ser uma enorme oportunidade de termos uma capacidade de acompanhamento das realidades ao nível local, uma vez, como sabemos, cada território tem, de facto, uma situação específica do ponto de vista daquilo que são as maiores barreiras que se colocam às crianças que se encontram em vulnerabilidade. Portanto, este é o desafio que temos hoje aqui neste workshop. Mais uma vez agradecer a presença de todos aqueles que receberam o nosso convite e que aceitaram de facto estar hoje aqui e acompanhar-nos nesta discussão, apelar a que possam participar, porque de facto a riqueza deste workshop está exatamente na oportunidade de que possam partilhar connosco o vosso sentir, a vossa experiência, os desafios, quem sabe até as oportunidades, no sentido que isso, de facto, consiste uma enorme mais-valia, quer seja para a Coordenação Nacional da Garantia para a Infância, também para as equipas da OCDE que têm estado a trabalhar connosco neste projeto e, portanto, aquilo que pretendemos, acima de tudo, é que no final deste projeto haja, de facto, aqui uma realidade muito diferente daquela que nós tínhamos quando do seu arranque, porque queremos, de facto, que este projeto, acima de tudo, seja uma mais-valia para aqueles que diariamente e na proximidade se encontram a trabalhar junto das crianças e das famílias em situação de vulnerabilidade. Vou então passar a palavra ao Florin Popa, da DG Reform. Florin, por favor.
Florin, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. So first, let me just mute the interpretation. There's a bit of back and forth here. Okay, so first of all, on behalf of DG Reform, it's really my pleasure to be with you today in this peer learning workshop. And allow me first to thank the National Child Guarantee Coordination Unit, Sonia Lia, the OECD team comprising experts from different directorates, and also the various Portuguese stakeholders for their involvement and commitment so far. And we rely on this involvement and commitment for the remainder of the project. And I just want to point out that this project will only be a success if the different actors and stakeholders involved in the implementation of the child guarantee in Portugal will find its results useful, relevant, and actionable. So no matter how the results might look from a technical standpoint, they will be successful only insofar as they will be used and followed up. So I'd like to say a few words about the policy context in which this is taking place. Well, disadvantage and exclusion at an early age, as you well know, have an impact on children's abilities to succeed later, to succeed professionally, personally, to be integrated socially. In 2023, almost a quarter of children between less than 18 years old in the EU, and that is almost 20 million children, were at risk of poverty or social exclusion, compared to 20.6% of adults. So this already tells us something, and also in 2023, 10% of children below 18 whose parents' level of education was high were at risk of poverty and social exclusion. And please compare that to 61.8% of children whose parents' level of education was low. And if you go at country level and at regional level as well, we also have quite a marked contrast. So there were, high values reported in countries like Romania, Spain, and there were low values reported in Finland, Slovenia, Netherlands. And for Portugal, the figure is 22.6. This is just to bring everything in the context of poverty and social exclusion. Well, at EU level, there has been some work on what we could call breaking the cycle of violence, poverty, and disadvantage across generation, so that children can really have a real opportunity to develop their skills and to really take advantage of opportunities. In many respects, the lives of children in the European Union, but also globally, have improved over the past decades. This is also thanks to better healthcare, improved access to education, and so on. However, there are serious discrepancies that remain between children from different countries, different regions, or depending on the socioeconomic status or educational level of their parents. So what happened at EU level in the last decade or so is that we have put in place a comprehensive legal policy and support framework with clear commitments to really try to facilitate the protection, promotion, and fulfillment of children's rights, notably through the EU strategy on the rights of the child and the European Child Guarantee. So these strategies basically propose a policy framework to all member states, where a number of measures are implemented together with the member states, where we have a monitoring framework with milestones, where we need to report regularly, and which establishes certain common objectives to be implemented by everybody according to their own specificity and context. So this can refer to education, healthcare, to justice systems, to better adapt the justice systems to children's needs as victims, to mental health and well-being, and so on. There's also a children's participation framework established as part of this EU strategy for the rights of the child, where the idea is really to have a meaningful and real consultation of children and young people in the design of child-related policy. I don't need to tell you too much about the European Child Guarantee, since this is the topic of our project, and it will be referred to many times today. But I wanted to bring you a few examples of what the European Commission through DG Reform is doing when it comes to children's rights, child protection, children's rights, and particularly in the context of the Child Guarantee. So for instance, we are supporting in Bulgaria and in Portugal, we are supporting reforms to improve the quality of early childhood education and care for children aged 0 to 6. And this refers to the governance structures and to monitoring and evaluation policies. And also, as part of these projects, we are developing pilot tools to monitor and evaluate the quality of early childhood education and care in both countries. Another example is a multi-country project that we have with Andalusia in Spain, Cyprus, Italy, and Slovenia, which focuses on supporting mental health care for the well-being of vulnerable children and young people. As you might know, I mean, mental care is something that has really come up on the top of the political agenda and will remain so for the foreseeable future. So the overarching aim of this project is to support the 4 participating member states to really make it easier for children and young people to access the services they need in order to protect and to enhance their well-being and mental health. And what is interesting here is that we work a lot with regional and local authorities to develop sort of a cross-sectoral framework for developing a model for mental health provision, so integrated services. A third example is one that refers to this Barnahus model that some of you might know about in Croatia. So Barnahus is a Scandinavian model, or at least it originated there, for a sort of a children's house where the idea is to offer child-friendly office under one roof where law enforcement, criminal justice, child protective services, medical and mental health workers cooperate and assess together the situation of the child and decide upon the follow-up. So the child is at the center, and everybody else, all the services need to come around and to organize, to coordinate themselves in order to offer the personalized, the tailored support that the child needs. So these are just a few examples of what we do. Some of them are directly related to the implementation of the child guarantee. Some others are indirectly related, but all of them are focusing on the rights of the child. We at DigiReform, it goes without saying, stand ready to support you and work with you as part of this project, as part of possible future projects in developing and in strengthening the child guarantee implementation framework, the child protection more broadly, considering all the time the best interest of the child. I would like to end with a note on national ownership. Because, I mean, we implement this project, we offer technical support for a specific period, but this support is only meaningful and actionable to the degree that it is taken over by the national authority and followed up. So previous experience with the technical support instrument shows that in many situations, public administrations sometimes struggle with high turnover, frequent institutional change, limited administrative capacity, political change, or modest political buy-in. So we take these challenges into account in the preparation of the TSI project, and institutional follow-up, political ownership remain really essential in making sure that the results and the recommendations generated by the project will be actually implemented at a local level, because strategies, action plans, and all the tools and the methodologies that we develop do not by themselves create change. Change is created by the people at local level who will use these tools in order to more efficiently target the children in need and to offer them the right services. So with this, I would like to thank you again. I would like to thank our hosts for this really valuable opportunity to exchange views and to build on the existing expertise. And I really look forward to purposeful and fruitful discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Florine and Sonia, for these introductory. Over 283 participants, and I'm very grateful to all of those who are with us today. This is for me a great honor to introduce you a very stimulating presentation by our colleagues from the Scottish Government, who will share with us a presentation in terms of improving outcomes for children and families and the Children's Services Planning System in Scotland, which has a lot of very interesting features, we think.
You can?
Yeah.
For our Portuguese colleagues.
Okay.
Now the floor is yours. I will give the floor to Edith McRae, Bryony Revel, and Franca MacLeod. And thank you for sharing your presentation with us. We'll allow you for 1 or 2 minutes for you to set up your presentation. And I hope everyone can confirm that they have interpretation. Gronia has just sent a message in Portuguese so that you can follow, and you need to mute the original audio in order to follow the interpretation. Okay.
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you everyone for having us along for this workshop. I'll just wait a minute just until we get the slides up on the screen. And so, Bryony, if you could just let me know when we can see the slides fine. So if you just let me know when you're good to go.
Yeah, if you can see the slides, happy to crack on. Thanks, Hayley, and
Perfect.
thanks, Stefan.
Many thanks, colleagues. So just a quick slide for introduction. So my name, as Stefan said, is Aileen McCreth. I'm a policy manager for Getting It Right for Every Child. And we also have Bryony Revel and Franca McLeod as well. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Getting It Right for Every Child, which is our long-standing commitment for improving outcomes for children and young people. And then I'll pass over to Bryony and Franca, who are going to talk to you about children's services planning and our model for that here in Scotland. Now, this first slide just is a bit of a context setting slide. So it shows Scotland's strategic approach to child and family wellbeing. And at the top of the slide there, you see our shared national vision for Scotland to be the best place in the world to grow up. And so this is recognised as part of Scotland's National Performance Framework, which has a children and young people's outcome, although there are other outcomes within the National Performance Framework which are also relevant to child and family wellbeing. And there was a lot of reference at the beginning of this workshop to the work going on to really put children's rights at the heart of everything that we do, and that very much aligns with our approach here in Scotland. So the foundation for our approach is rights and wellbeing. And so this is reflected in, firstly, the UNCRC. So Scotland is the first UK nation to incorporate the UNCRC into domestic law. And so that was with the UNCRC Incorporation Scotland Act coming into force in July 2024. But also we have Getting It Right for Every Child. And so this is our national policy and practice approach, and it includes a legal definition of child wellbeing. And so those two things underpin a key number of priorities for children and families here in Scotland. And so these include action to keep the promise to Scotland's care experience community. And so this consists of widespread changes underway to reform Scotland's systems and services which focus on care, protection and youth justice. Eradicating child poverty remains a really key national focus for us, with the cost of living crisis worsening the impacts for increasing numbers of families. And finally, public service reform is at the heart of what we do to improve impact and efficiency as public services strive to meet the needs of communities at a time of real increasing demand and significant resource pressures. And all of this is done with a focus on prevention and early intervention, which is key to delivering this public service reform. Thanks, Bryony. And so this slide illustrates Getting It Right for Every Child, which is Scotland's long-standing framework, which underpins all of our policies to improve outcomes for children and young people. Importantly, Getting It Right for Every Child is a shared framework. So it was designed in collaboration with practitioners and stakeholders through extensive consultation and Pathfinder projects between 2005 and 2008, with further development of guidance thereafter to support implementation of the national approach to supporting children, young people and families. And this is across public, third sector and community services. So it's a shared approach at all system levels. And Getting It Right for Every Child provides a shared, accessible language for improving wellbeing, and this is supported by a statutory definition of childhood wellbeing. So you see up on that slide the 8 indicators. So these are eight indicators for wellbeing. Sorry, I'll slow down my speech a little bit. We're quite bad for speaking quickly in Scotland from time to time. And so that slide that you see up there captures our holistic understanding of well-being as consisting of multiple overlapping factors in a young person's life. And so this is also in line with international definitions of well-being. Getting It Right for Every Child is also grounded in children's rights. So the values and principles of Getting It Right for Every Child place the child at the heart of decisions that are made about them. Also, a very important aspect of GIRFEC is coordinated whole family support. And so Getting It Right for Every Child in its approach recognises that what support is in place for the family and what their needs are will impact a child or young person's well-being. And so this approach supports a multi-agency way of planning support for a child or young person. And importantly, Getting It Right for Every Child is a framework that's not just for children in need. So quite often with things like the Every Child Guarantee, we're talking about children in need, but this framework is in place for all of Scotland's babies, infants, children and young people. And that covers everything from universal services all the way through to that more intensive support. Next slide, please, Bryony. Thank you. And so this next slide captures our national practice model. And so the national practice model, as part of the Getting It Right for Every Child approach, provides practitioners, together with children, young people and their families, with a tool to structure and analyse information in a consistent way, and for practitioners to be able to holistically take account of a child or young person's needs, identify their strengths and any challenges they face, and then consider the most appropriate offer of timely support. So it's all about providing the right support at the right time and from the right people for that child, young person and their family. And so the national practice model includes Scotland's 8 statutory wellbeing indicators, which were on the previous slide. It also incorporates the My World Triangle, which I'll speak about further on the next slide. And it also has a resilience matrix, which helps practitioners with assessing wellbeing in more complex cases. And so this model really supports multi-agency planning for individual children and young people tailored to their specific circumstances, and with the child or young person's voice at the centre of support provided to improve their well-being. Next slide, please, Bryony. Thanks, Bryony. And then what you see up there on the slide is the My World Triangle. So importantly, Getting It Right for Every Child is an ecological approach. And so the My World Triangle allows us to consider the social, emotional, cognitive and physical development of an individual child or young person in the context of both their immediate caregiving environment of parents and carers, but also the wider world influences of community and society. And so this includes the socioeconomic factors in a young person's community and how that might be impacting them. And this is a key tool for ensuring that support for a child or young person includes holistic whole family support where it's needed, and that services can work together to ensure that children and families receive the right support at the right time and from the right people. And so Getting It Right for Every Child underpins this strategic planning of services and support for children and families across Scotland. And I'll now hand over to Bryony, who's going to speak to you a little bit more about children's services planning. Thanks, Bryony.
Thanks, Ailey, and it's my pleasure to be here today to speak with colleagues in Portugal and the OECD about children's services planning. I previously led the development of our multi-agency children's services plan in my own local government area, and I joined the Scottish Government in 2020 as a professional advisor to support national level work on children's services planning. And I never underestimate what a privilege it is to play even a small role in empowering children and families, and to work with partners so that we can plan and deliver support in a way to make sure this has real impact on the lives and experiences of children and their families. So children's services planning is Scotland's legal framework for strategic planning of local services and support for children and families. It's a legal requirement, and the legislation is set out in Part 3 of the Children and Young People Scotland Act 2014. There's additional statutory guidance, which was also developed with stakeholders, which explains the requirements of these different legal duties in more detail. That guidance was originally published in 2016, and a second version was published in 2020. I thought it was helpful to share Scotland's children's services planning journey with you all, and this timeline shows the beginning of the new legislation, which was enacted in 2016, and our initial 3-year children's services planning cycle under this new law ran from 2017 to 2020, with our first national review of children's services plans in 2019. So Scotland is now in our 3rd cycle of children's services planning, 3-year cycles, and the next planning cycle will run from 2026 to 2029. Over each 3-year cycle, I think it's fair to say we've learned a lot, both through the local work across partners to develop, deliver and report on their children's services plans, as well as at national level, both through the review of children's services plans, the meetings and membership of our National Children's Services Planning Strategic Leads Network, and other work with policy colleagues and stakeholders across Scotland. So as we said, children's services planning is a place-based framework for improving outcomes for children and their families. It's a key mechanism for the local delivery of GIRFEC at all levels, getting it right for every child. So in strategic planning, in service delivery, and in frontline practice with individual children, young people and families. And one of the criteria for children's services planning is to make sure that local areas are effectively embedding GIRFEC practice at every level across different agencies and services. So children's services planning provides that golden thread, and it is a way of demonstrating how different sectors and services and professionals will work together in each local area to plan and deliver holistic child and family-centred services in that place. Each Children's Services Plan describes the different services and supports that will be delivered across partners to give a whole systems approach which spans from prevention to protection. So that's things from community-based support, employability, right through to child protection services and intensive support. So the Children's Services Plan must describe how that local delivery of services and support.
I would ask the speaker to slow down, please, because interpreting isn't possible at this speed. Can the speaker slow down, please? Thank you.
And so it has that flexibility to be both meeting the national requirements, but also really responding to what's happening on the ground in the areas that people live. The 5 main aims of children's services planning are also recorded in this legislation, and they are to safeguard, support and promote the well-being of all children and family living in that area, to make sure services and support are delivered to provide help at the earliest opportunity and where possible to stop those needs arising, and that, as Ailey said, is where universal services of health and education come in. And the statutory guidance also defines primary prevention and early intervention. It says this is an opportunity at any point across a child and family's life cycle, but also recognises that really crucial window for healthy child development in the pre-birth and early years, particularly up to age 3. The third aim is to make sure that service delivery feels joined up at all levels. And this collaboration point is really key. And this is what makes children's services planning quite unique. It's not about one policy or one service. It's about that collective big picture and making sure that's delivered in a cohesive way. The Children's Services Plan must also show how partners are making the best use of their local resources across different agencies and services. This is both to demonstrate accountability for public money, but also added value through collaboration. These resources include assets, budgets, and workforce. Do we have the right people in the right place, doing the right things at the right time? And lastly, there's a mention of related services, which is a unique term, but this basically means it's services which are not a traditional children's service, but they still have a significant impact on child well-being. And I'll talk about this on a further slide. So it can sometimes be misunderstood when talking about children's services plans that this just has a focus on the delivery of services for children, but there are 2 types of services mentioned in the legislation. Children's services are things like schools or childcare, and related services include things like community-based support, housing, welfare rights, or libraries, and importantly, the adult services which are provided to a parent or carer for their own needs, such as in relation to parental mental health or alcohol use. And there are 3 reasons adult services are so crucial within children's services planning. 1, the impact on child well-being when an adult does not get the right support for their own needs, and this impacts on their parenting role. 2, to support smooth transitions for young people as they move from receipt of children's services to adult services, for example, in the case of disability. And thirdly, to make sure that whole family support is available so that children's and adult services are working together collaboratively to meet the needs of the family unit as a whole. So now I will talk about who's responsible for children's services planning duties. The main joint duties are assigned to the Territorial Health Board and the local authority, the local government. So they jointly lead it. The legislation also defines specific other service providers. These are public services that have a key role in child and family well-being and include health and social care services provided through integration joint boards, the police, the Scottish courts, and fire and rescue. There are also duties on Scottish ministers, both in respect of the Scottish Prison Service, as well as additional duties on ministers to undertake a review of all the children's services plans in Scotland, which my colleague Franca will talk to you about later on in the presentation. There are also a number of ministerial powers set out in this legislation, which can determine how and by whom children's services planning functions should be delivered, and to specify what is considered as a children's or related service. But it is important to mention that these powers have not been used to date, and ministers must consult with stakeholders in advance of using these powers. The duties are mainly to publish a 3-year children's services plan, and then there are a range of different duties beneath that to prepare, to implement, to deliver, and to review this. And the local authority and health board must also publish an annual report which demonstrates how and where outcomes have been improved for the children and families living in that area through the provision of services and supports and in line with the legislative requirements of children's services planning. At the centre of children's services planning is partnership with children, young people and families, and this helps all organisations in the children's services planning partnership to work together as a collective across agencies, some of which are shown on this slide, and to work together with the local community. And they must do this collaboratively to identify population needs, to agree the local strategic priorities, and to plan and co-design services for the local area. So this partnership approach is absolutely crucial to deliver support in a way which results in real impact and to improve the daily experiences of children and young people living in that area. And importantly, it makes sure that the views and experiences of local families are directly informing how we report on progress, and as well as directly influencing local decision making. So the local authority and health board, working with partners, must make sure the local children's services plan is comprehensive in its scope, and that an effective opportunity for the participation of all stakeholders is created over each 3-year planning cycle. This multi-agency and cross-sector approach makes sure that the local plan is fully integrated across that whole system from prevention to protection, and that it's making the best use of the available local resources and services of different partners. This slide shows the Transforming Outcomes route map, which is part of Scotland's Children, Young People and Families Outcomes Framework. This provides a high-level and holistic summary of what we need to deliver to safeguard, support and promote well-being of babies, children, young people and families. Based on that ecological approach of getting it right for every child and the My World Triangle, this shows the different elements of the whole system approach. So you can see it includes child poverty and inequality, high-quality environments with green space, housing, inclusive communities, antenatal services, support and care for children who cannot be looked after safely at home, learning, education, good mental health and well-being. The route map is deliberately high level, so it gives a big picture overview. And below this would sit a range of much more detailed national and local policies, strategies and guidance, which focus on a more specific aspect of well-being, such as being safe, or consider the needs of a particular population subgroup, such as those in poverty, or focus on specific service delivery like education or children's services social work. The route map was developed to use as a tool, firstly for national policies or services at national and local level to consider their own unique contribution to child and family wellbeing, and secondly to consider the extent to which this delivery is being provided in a way which complements and works with other parts of the system so that it is received as joined up. For children's services planning partnerships, the route map can be used to help all the organisations in the local area work together to identify any gaps in provision, to do service mapping, and to make sure that the local children's services plan includes information on services which address all these different themes. So children's services plan must address the needs of all children and families living in that area, so the more universal provision, and it must also address the needs of groups of children and families with specific types of need. And we've put some examples listed on this slide. So the children's services plan will describe over each 3-year period what services will be delivered, how support will be provided to families to improve outcomes, and it will also detail any improvement activities which will take place. I'm going to talk a little bit about the role of local leadership, and this quote on the slide comes from the statutory guidance, which really identifies the importance of that collective local leadership and governance of children's services planning through the multi-agency strategic group. The membership of that group should be senior managers who control the budgets for their service and who have the authority to make decisions about service delivery. That strategic group of leaders together set the culture and tone and vision for the local children's services planning partnership, and they are responsible for making sure that local arrangements across different services are delivered in line with the legislation and ambition of children's services planning. So this approach in Scotland is really about driving continuous improvement with a sequence of different strategic activities over each 3-year period. For example, analysing data to identify local population needs and priority actions, or consulting with children and families to develop new services or to improve their experiences of how a particular service is being delivered in that local area. So local authorities and health boards should provide the local workforce, children and families, and other service providers in that local area with opportunities to participate in different aspects of children's services planning and to create a real sense of shared ownership of the local plan. The plan is only one component of that overall approach. Although the legislation for children's services planning in Scotland does not prescribe a complete strategic commissioning process, the statutory guidance is very clear that children's services planning is a key driver of local joint commissioning of services, and using that information to really work together across partners to do commissioning in a joined up way, across public and third sector partners. There are different types of accountability in place, both at national and local level, which help us review the effectiveness of children's services planning. So we've already discussed that crucial role of the local Children's Services Planning Partnership Strategic Group. And at national level, we also review all children's services plans on behalf of ministers, which Franca will discuss shortly. This is also supplemented by findings from scrutiny and inspection of public bodies. So we have the Care Inspectorate, for example, and education inspections of schools. Local areas also undertake quality assurance, self-evaluation and improvement activity, which helps them identify internally areas for improvement and good practice which they want to scale and spread. Each area is accountable to its communities by publication of an annual children's services plan. I'd like to talk briefly about our National Children's Services Planning Strategic Leads Network, which was set up in 2017 as a forum to support national and local connectivity on children's services planning. This is co-chaired by the Scottish Government's Director for Children and Families and a representative at a senior level from the Children's Services Planning Strategic Leads Network. At the moment, this is currently the Promise Scotland, and previously it was the Executive Director of Children and Families Services in Fife Council. The membership of that network includes lead government policy leads, the local children's services planning strategic lead for that partnership, third sector representatives, and representatives of improvement, scrutiny and delivery organisations at national level. We're really grateful today to be joined by one of our local children's services planning strategic leads, Kevin, who's kindly volunteered to share his experiences from a local perspective in the question and answer session later on. This national network contributes to improvement activity at national and local level, and also offers opportunities for everybody involved in children's services planning to share learning across Scotland and to learn from different local approaches to strategic planning activity, to service delivery, and to evaluation of impact. The network also acts as a forum for children's services planning to influence the development of national strategies and policies, to make sure these develop in a way which takes account of both the positives and the challenges being experienced in local delivery on the ground for the workforce and for children and families. Before I hand over to Franca, I'm just going to talk briefly about Scotland's Whole Family Wellbeing Funding Programme, known as WFWF. And there were introductory comments which recognised that legislation, guidance, resources and tools are only pieces of paper without the people to deliver them. And that's why it's so important that there's a co-design approach to delivering these resources, but also to make sure that they're implemented in practice. And that's really crucial. And that support for people in implementation is part of where the WFWF programme came from. This programme was set up following publication of The Promise in February 2020, which identified the need for early, holistic family support, and that this helps families stay together where it is safe to do so. The need for family support was compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic, and like Portugal, we saw real pressures on families, with increasing numbers of families requesting support and feeling in crisis. Together with national and local partners, the Scottish Government co-produced a vision and national principles for family support in Scotland. This focuses on all families getting the right help at the right time for as long as they need it, and very much follows the getting it right for every child approach. In particular, the role of whole family support is increasingly recognised as contributing to the Scottish Government's priority of eradicating child poverty, and the Whole Family Wellbeing Funding Programme is a key part of that transformational change programme at national and local level, and as well as being part of action to keep the promise to Scotland's care-experienced community. The Scottish Government's Programme for Government in 2021 committed to investing £500 million over the lifetime of this Parliament to support the development of whole family support services, in line with that vision and national principles. An associated commitment set out the Scottish Government's ambition that by 2030, 5% of Scotland's community health and wellbeing funding would be invested in holistic whole family support. This commitment recognised, however, that fundamental change in the system was required. It also recognised that our vision should go beyond preventing families from entering the care system to also support broader wellbeing. So the Whole Family Wellbeing Programme is doing this by promoting the availability of support across Scotland, which wraps around each family's individual needs to help families thrive and prevent them from reaching crisis. The Whole Family Wellbeing Funding Programme was established to provide a package of activity aimed at driving that system change at the local level, primarily through children's services planning partnerships. Importantly, this recognised the different circumstances of different geographical areas across Scotland. We have a lot of island and rural communities, as well as cities. And so it deliberately did not mandate a specific delivery model for family support. Instead, the programme asked partnerships to assess their current delivery system and to identify the gaps and opportunities which improve local delivery of holistic support for families. The programme was designed together with partners, including the local children's services planning partnerships, the Promise Scotland, and the Council of Scottish Local Authorities and third sector representatives. Over £110 million has been invested since 2022 in this programme of activity to support system change. The programme recognises that to embed change which is sustainable, we needed to create the conditions and culture which promote multidisciplinary cross-sector working. The programme listened to feedback that this needed to be resourced in parallel to business as usual to enable workforce capacity to develop and to test new or expanded delivery models, and to support that shift of local investment from crisis intervention towards early and preventative support. So what has the programme done so far? That £110 million has funded a programme of activity which has responded to what children and family sector told us was needed to support local delivery of whole system change. This has had three main elements of funding. Element 1 funding was allocated to children's services planning partnerships, so they had collective responsibility for this funding. The money was routed through local government, as the partnerships are not a statutory body, so can't receive direct funding. However, the accountability, decision-making and reporting on whole family wellbeing funding is done by the partnership, not by the local government alone. This approach has also allowed underspent funds to be carried over to the next financial year, and this was really important to support local planning and decision-making. Each partnership receives a proportion of a total of £32 million per year, and this is allocated weighed by population numbers, levels of poverty and rurality factors. Reporting on whole family wellbeing funding activity is done through a specific section in the Children's Services Plan annual report. And while there are broad criteria for funding set within the framework of the national principles, a national logic model for systems change and criteria for spend, each local area has been encouraged to consider local needs and priorities. So whole family wellbeing funding activity looks quite different across different areas. The flexibility of whole family wellbeing funding has been welcomed by children's services planning partnerships and is considered as a model for other funds. And I think it's important to say that whilst we have legislation for children's services planning, there is flexibility within that. So across each area of Scotland, we have 30 children's services planning partnerships. They have designed their children's services plans in different ways. and we've included as part of our resource pack a web link to each of the plans for Scotland, so colleagues in Portugal may be interested in having a look at these plans in slower time. Element 2 of the whole family wellbeing funding was 3 local collaborative partnerships, East Lothian, Glasgow, a large city, and East Ayrshire, an area, who received dedicated improvement and implementation support from Scottish Government using improvement advisors and a national implementation organisation, Celsius. I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. And element 3 has funded systems change across Scottish Government policy areas.
Sorry for interrupting. If you could just slow down a little bit because interpretation cannot follow, and then most of our Portuguese colleagues then would be impaired. I'm very sorry for the interruption.
No problem.
To me.
No problem, thanks. Element 3 funded a system change across Scottish Government policy areas. These projects included delivery of 2 new mother and child units run by Aberlour Childcare Trust, which is a third sector organisation, a Pathfinder project in Dundee City, which takes a person-centred approach to tackling child poverty. And this is a partnership between Dundee City Council and local partners, the Scottish Government and the Department for Work and Pensions. A third example is Inverclyde Transformation Initiative, which is a project which supports approximately 100 young people through targeted and intensive individual one-to-one support, which has a focus on risk reduction, group work, peer mentoring, and diversion activities. We spoke about some of the local activity which takes part as part of whole family wellbeing funding, and I'll talk now about a couple of examples. In South Lanarkshire, whole family wellbeing funding has supported the scaling up of a family support programme called Pathfinders to 7 schools. This project is available to families who are on the edges of care, so at risk of coming into formal care measures, and it aims to reduce the need for more complex intervention at a later stage. This project works with high schools and social workers to connect with families whose children are disengaging from education, and the project has a focus on preventing the child or young person from being taken into formal care. The programme promotes hubs in the schools and discussion with families. So after an initial referral from the school or social work, there is a multi-agency support programme which enables the hubs to connect with families more easily. For example, the project will provide families a telephone number to call for support or to show them where they can access some extra support. This approach has reduced the need for formal referrals to targeted services and more intensive social work support, and has also reduced the time it takes for families to identify the correct point of contact to meet their needs. Another example of local work is a collaborative partnership with East Lothian, and this involves work to collaborate on delivering local outcomes, but it does this while gathering really in-depth learning on what support it takes to deliver change in a complex local system. There is a change and practice team which work closely with the national support team of improvement and implementation specialists, and this aims to develop knowledge and skills to support change and to deliver sustainable improvements for families, communities, and the workforce who deliver support. This support has included a mix of facilitation, teaching, mentoring, and coaching. And the support includes systems thinking, tools and resources for quality improvement, active implementation science, participation, co-design and community engagement activities, learning to tell the stories of improvement, and an exploration of collective leadership to support the individuals who lead and manage change. This collaborative partnership activity is anchored to the East Lothian Children's Services Plan, and it has an aim of supporting strategic alignment and connectivity from practice learning right through to decision making by the Children's Services Planning Partnership. There is also work underway on social research and use of data to measure the impact of preventative and early intervention work and to support evidence-based decision making. East Lothian received additional funding to test their approaches to transformation, and they've used these funds to supplement a team of family outreach workers in 2 localities. The family outreach team build a strong relationship with local families to provide tailored support, and this helps them deal with daily challenges through a trauma-informed approach and building on individual family skills and strengths to improve their confidence. Families have requested support on topics like child and family life, understanding how to access support in the local area, finances and budgeting, and household management. Whole family wellbeing funding element 2, underpinned by a quality improvement approach, has enabled East Lothian to build their understanding of what it takes to achieve change at different levels, from strategic thinking to delivering services. And the learning from this will be used to support.
Também a aprendizagem será utilizada para apoiar a mudança a nível nacional. Quero aqui igualmente falar sobre a Rede Nacional para a Aprendizagem. Aqui reunimos diferentes parcerias para que as próprias crianças pudessem aprender sobre o bem-estar da família. Também temos um projeto a curto prazo.
Sorry to interrupt. I've been told the translation has stopped. Is there a problem? Just sorry for interrupting, but we have 315 Portuguese participants. If the translator can just confirm she's back on board.
For some reason, the interpretation switched over to the English channel from the Portuguese channel. So if that...
Can the interpreter confirm?
Okay.
Can we resume again?
Agora sim.
Is okay? Is the interpreter back on board?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm very sorry for the interruption, but...
No problem, Stefan.
Sorry.
The Short Life project is on improving commissioning and procurement, and this has a working group of key partners with project activity led by Scotland Excel, which is our local government procurement experts. And this aims to think about what support is needed to improve joint strategic commissioning and procurement, and to make recommendations on future improvement activity and support. So what's been the learning from whole family wellbeing, and what are the future plans? The learning is that transformational change of this scale takes significant time. It requires planning, recruitment, and staff retention, which can be a challenge, and it takes time to get the right people and to build skills. And it takes time to build relationships across and between different services and partners to embed the level of change that we're seeking to achieve. This told us that short-term funding does not enable the level of trust to be built between funders, providers, and communities, and that that's needed to deliver partnership working and embed cultural change. A longer-term approach provides the time for local areas to research current provision and identify community need, and to identify gaps to take forward improvement and support. Instead of just new activity, governance is often an area that requires further work before getting to the spending stage, and it's really important to ensure connection across the multiple services involved in this work. So elongating programme timeframes beyond the end of this Parliament at 2025 to 2032 has recognised the time needed for transformation to take place, to be genuine change. that's sustainable. Maintaining commitment to funding is crucial, and this recognises the need for consistency and stability of funding so that children's services planning partnerships can plan and recruit. We have ambition to scale up whole family wellbeing funding, but we need to do this on the basis of evidence. We're also exploring new funding streams to support local transformation, and this brings the opportunity to evolve, expand, and add pace to this approach. Feedback from local areas suggests that new funding streams could support additional transformational change work. For example, in responding to the immediate issues faced by the system with an increase of families in crisis, providing additional funding to some local children's services planning partnership areas to support their next phase of implementation. And early indications are that children's services planning partnerships are asking for continued simplicity and flexibility of funding, and this flexibility is crucial. We're also considering expanding our national support offer to help children's services planning partnerships. This could include supporting leadership and self-assessment capacity within local partnerships, developing a learning system to build on the Learning into Action network, focused quality improvement support, and connecting across change programmes, in particular the Promise and early childhood development. We're also evolving the Scottish Government's cross-portfolio approach to develop proposals for future investment. This builds on the current investment in policy projects by whole family wellbeing funding and considers how this funding can support wider system change, for example, in tackling child poverty, early childhood development, and wider public service reform, where many of the barriers and opportunities are the same. I'll now hand over to Franca MacLeod, Principal Research Officer for Children and Families Analysis at the Scottish Government, who will talk to you about the review of children's services plans.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be speaking to you. So I'm going to be taking you through the section on the analysis and review of children's services plans. So as Bryony was saying, it is a duty on local partners to produce these children's services plans every 3 years, and there is also a legislative duty on the Scottish Government to review them. This is part of wider work on monitoring the effectiveness and the impact of children's services planning across Scotland. And the review is a key piece of evidence for much wider national and local activity, and this slide lists some of the examples, some of the specific examples of the things that this review is contributing to and will contribute to. So the review of the plans was externally commissioned to an independent research company. And there were 2 outputs produced. The first was individual CSPP feedback reports were provided to each geographical area, and areas were then offered a follow-on discussion if they thought that was helpful. And the second output was a national report that summarised the review analysis and the key findings, and that's what I'll be presenting today. So the analysis was done through a thematic analysis that was structured around the 15 statutory criteria that the guidance says the plans have to follow. And the report highlights areas of strength, improvement, and gives good practice example from the plans. And it also provides an overview of the evolving Scottish social policy, legislative, and improvement context. So in the plans, CSPPs were asked to identify a small number of strategic priorities. This table shows the main categories that the priorities fall under and how common they are. So you can see that child protection, children's rights, and mental well-being were a priority for most areas. And then other priorities also clustered around some of the other categories. It is worth noting that the guidance asked them to identify just a few priorities. So if something is not identified as a priority, that does not mean that it is not covered in the plan at all. And it does not mean that the CSPP doesn't think it's important. So this slide provides the overall summary of the extent to which the 30 plans that were reviewed have achieved each of the 15 criteria. So the criteria that are highlighted in green are the ones where most of the plans have achieved them, and the ones that are highlighted in yellow and red are the ones where more plans only partly or not at all achieve the criteria. So I'll go into some of these in a bit more detail in the next few slides. So the review of plans identified areas of strength where CSPPs were generally doing well. These included links to other plans and reports, such as the Promise, Child Poverty, and local area improvement plans. And that criterion was met by almost all of the reports. Other areas of strength were having a shared vision for the CSPP, and that also included information about CSPP governance. And another area of strength was around prevention and early intervention. So as you can see, almost all of the plans achieved these 3 criteria. And if we go to the next slide, please. And then other areas of strength identified that were met by most plans, but not quite as many as the other ones, related to children's rights, family support, and our Getting It Right for Every Child approach. And the review then also identified areas for improvement where there was a smaller number of plans that had met the criteria. So the first of these is the use of resources, and that includes both workforce and financial resources. So we can see that 13 of the 30 plans did not meet this criteria at all, and a lot of the plans had insufficient detail on how the resources were allocated across different services. And some plans mentioned joint commissioning between partners, but again, there was not sufficient detail. And other areas for improvement included the measurable and time-related aspects of the SMART criterion. And the SMART criterion says that the priorities set by the plan need to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-related. And then another area for improvement was very similar around having manageable and measurable priorities. Other areas for improvement were around the joint strategic need assessment that needs to be conducted, better links to the national performance framework, and on monitoring indicators. So the monitoring indicators criterion was actually one of the ones that was scored yellow because half the plans did achieve it. However, also 9 of the plans did not specify any monitoring indicators at all, and therefore it is included in the areas for improvement. Overall, we can see that a lot of the areas for improvement are related to each other, and they are around making better use of data, better measurement, measuring how the CSPP is doing in terms of its activities and outcomes. So this slide is about where we are currently at with the national report. We have already shared these findings in a number of forums, and we are currently working on a ministerial submission, and then we are hoping to publish the report next month in November. And in the wider sense, the review will support local CSP partners with their improvement work, with their annual reporting, and in the longer term, with the development of the next round of children's services plans. The findings will also inform decision-making on a range of national and local improvement activity, programme delivery, support offers and policy developments. And then finally to say that we will be taking forward a refresh of the Part 3 Children's Services Planning Statutory Guidance that sets out what the plans should involve, so that it better reflects the current legislative and policy landscape. So for this last section, I'm going to introduce some work we did to support the CSPPs in their planning and reporting. So as I mentioned, the findings from the review show that a lot of the areas for improvement were around monitoring data. And this was also the case in the previous review of the previous plans. And there was a request from CSPPs for more guidance and support on what they should be measuring and reporting. And we responded to this request by working with a wide range of stakeholders to co-produce a set of 21 indicators, and these are called the core wellbeing indicators. They are a high-level holistic set covering children and young people's well-being as a whole. So as this slide illustrates, they are structured around the three sides of the My World Triangle that is part of the GIRFIC approach, and they cover the different aspects of well-being identified within GIRFIC, as well as the different UNCRC articles. So as you can see from the colours, there is not one indicator per topic, but rather each indicator covers different aspects. And that is because it is really important to us that we approach well-being holistically. So yeah, if we can go to the next slide now, sorry, that was quite confusing. So these are the actual indicator definitions that we will send these slides around afterwards so you can have a look then. The indicators are drawn from a range of different sources, and each source is available at both national and local level. So we can have that consistency of reporting between local and national reporting. The indicator set was made available to local partners in spring 2023 so that they could use it in the development of the 2023 to 2026 plans. We can go to the next slide, please. So we also published national reporting on the 21 indicators in September 2023. And this reporting presents top-line findings and socio-demographic breakdowns for each of the indicators. So I will not be presenting findings today, but the link to the report is on the slide and we will be circulating that afterwards. And if this is something you're interested in finding out more about, then we'd be happy to discuss that separately. And this indicator reporting has also been included in a wide range of other policy documents and reports, and these are also linked on the previous slide. So for the final slide for this topic is this diagram which we have produced to show the relationship between the outcomes framework for children, young people and families that the core wellbeing indicators are part of and other frameworks and policies. So the core wellbeing indicators are high level and they are intended to be a core. They are not supposed to be things, the only thing that the plans report or the annual reports report. All the purple boxes on this slide relate to specific aspects of well-being or particular groups of children and young people. And each of these purple boxes will go into a lot more depth on that topic or that group of children than it is possible to do in a high-level course set. So we strongly encourage CSPPs to draw on this much wider deep dive data that is available as it makes sense according to their local priorities. And that was all I was going to cover. So we've just got a few slides at the end with some key links to follow up and some key information. And we've also provided our contact details. And please feel free to contact any of us if you would like to discuss further.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can stop the presentation mode. This was a very rich presentation. We are also impressed. It has everything that I guess Portugal could dream of. I think Lia Cavaliero has a question for you. Lia? Lia?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
My video, okay, I was freezed. Thank you very much, the colleagues from Scotland. Very interesting, your project. And I see a lot of common aspects with what we are trying to do here in Portugal. I think you are some steps ahead when we are talking about the local holistic approach. Even though we have very good examples already working here in Portugal, we are starting to work with the local units to be able to reach this kind of integration. And I have a really practical question. You talked about your local service plans. We also proposed our local units to define local plans focused on children and young people needs. Are these local service plans available? Can we and the local units have access to it to understand the diversity of the plans to inspire us? Are they available? Can we consult them?
I can answer that. Yes, they are required to publish the plans. So in the presentation, I have included a slide that has a link to all 30 plans for Scotland. So colleagues can look at those in slower time. And you will see there's quite a variety because there's flexibility in how people present the information locally and work with their local communities, but within the legislative parameters.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there further questions from our Portuguese colleagues? I should also mention that we have with us the head of a local services plan from Ireland, who will also be available for discussion with you after we go over the general question. So I guess there is everything in this presentation, because you are doing community engagement. What I think that would be helpful maybe to hear for our Portuguese colleagues is what mechanisms you use to encourage the sharing of experiences between the partners of the CSPPs?
Yes, so we use the Children's Services Planning Strategic Leads Network, and that includes the mix of colleagues, so the representative on behalf of their Children's Services Planning Partnership, so from each of those 30 areas across Scotland, and that brings people together so the people who are leading the development of those plans have the opportunity to share. Also, the work that we described around whole family wellbeing funding is doing locally based work with those collective partnerships in local areas as well. So we have a mix of national connectivity, local connectivity, and as part of the network, we have meetings every quarter, but we have pop-ups where we focus on a particular issue or topic or aspect of children's services planning in more detail, and that we expand to wider colleagues. So, for example, our next one is going to focus on joint strategic needs assessment, which is a starting point for the plan. What is the data we have, and what does this tell us about the services we have, the gaps we have, the needs of our population? And that's really this sort of step one. So we have lots of opportunities for sharing, learning, and good practice and challenges. I would by no means say we have a perfect system in Scotland. This stuff is really tricky. And I think it's important to say that the areas from the national review that are identified for improvement, this isn't a criticism. It's saying these are complex, difficult issues. There's a reason it's really difficult. I can see my colleague Kevin, who's our local lead, has got his hand up here. Hi, Kevin.
Thanks, Thank you, Bryony. Good morning, colleagues. My name's Kevin Malarkey, and I'm representing South Lanarkshire's Children's Services Partnership. I would just like to add to what Bryony's saying from a local perspective. It's really helpful and reassuring to engage at that national level with colleagues from across the country, sharing good practice, learning from each other, sharing concerns as well, which is also very helpful, and a sense of that we may not be alone in struggling with some of the kind of challenges, but also just taking back good practice from colleagues nationally to a local area and thinking about how we can amend our approach based on successes elsewhere in the country. It's a very, very valuable time for us to engage in these networks.
Thank you very much, Kevin and Bryony. From us at the OECD, we were very impressed by the Scottish approach, and we know that there is great demand from many of the local units in Portugal to have greater sharing and community management. I think I understand from Leah that our colleague Nelia Feliciano, who I think is in charge of the relations with the local units in Portugal, has a question. I hope Nelia can take the floor. Nelia? Where are you, Nelia? I can't find her.
Bom dia a todos e a todas. Eu penso que eu teria uma questão para colocar.
Good morning. I have a question that I would like to ask. Can I ask it now?
Pronto, em primeiro lugar, agradecer
First of all, I want to thank this rich experience that you've just shared with us. Effectively, Portugal is indeed working on mechanisms, but there are lots of aspects that you mentioned that I would like, obviously, to read about in detail, thanks to the documents that you will make available. You mentioned something very interesting that had to do with the fact that when we work in partnership, we have to invest in leadership and analytical capacities. I would like to better understand, therefore, how do you put this into practice? Because we have this need not only at a local level, but at a national level. But if we speak about the units, we want to perfect our work. Obviously, families have great expectations from us. So how do you work this?
So the question is, I guess, how do you find the analytical content and how do you frame all of this strategy? I heard really a very rich set of suggestions, but I don't know who wants to take the question, Bryony or Franca or Edith?
Is this about how do the local areas identify the data? Is this the question?
I thought the question was more on national level. Nelia? Nelia, can you confirm if your question was more for the national level? And how do they develop the analytical framework and so forth? Nelia? Nelia, yes.
Eu iria pedir mais ao nível local, nas placas.
No, I would say at a local level, mostly. I want to better understand, how do you develop this type of work at a local level? When you're talking about leadership, for instance, leadership for us is key. Also, yes, when we take into consideration that we have rich partnerships at a local level, how can we improve leadership, for instance, and analytical capacities? Thank you.
So Kevin, the question is clearly for you. How can we improve leadership and analytical capacities at the local level?
Okay, thank you. I think, first of all...
You're muted, I can't hear you. Can you start again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. In terms of leadership at the local level, I think it's really, really important to have the right people from the right organisations around our strategic table. And that's making sure that we've got that understanding and that buy-in and that commitment across the board that's shared across the partners. And we do that in South Lanarkshire. I think we do that really, really well. What's really important behind that, we're talking about our understanding of needs and our use of evidence and data for our kind of needs assessment, I think is part of the question. We spend a lot of time trying to collect the available data that is often held by individual partners and bring it into one place. We then we try to organise that in a way that we all understand and accept, and we use the methods that my Scottish Government colleagues have been talking about. We use our national outcomes framework, and we use the Getting It Right for Every Child, the GIRFEC wellbeing themes, the wellbeing indicators as our organisation for the data. We then make sure that we are talking very, very frequently to our children and our young people and our families in terms of their experiences of accessing support and services and what works for them and what doesn't. And we also talk to our workforce who are delivering services and delivering support to make sure that their view of that direct contact, that relationship, and their learning from that is really accurate. And we bring together the local leaders, so for example, we're already thinking about how we're going to do that for 2026 for our new children's services plan, what data we need to gather, who needs to be involved in that, and maybe potentially some of the themes that are already coming out of that. So we spend a lot of time to prepare, to understand, to analyse, and to organise that data and that understanding, which then feeds our children's services plan. The important thing for me and for our partners in that process is that, as well as having that commitment from all the leaders, almost as one view, as one vision, that children and families are very visible in that process, and they get the opportunity to share their experience and to inform our process. And I think what's really, really important in the way in which our leadership operate and the way in which we comply with the guidance from the Scottish Government is that we write our plans, our children's services plans, and we write our annual reports for our children's services plans with our children and families as the primary audience in terms of our accountability. So we see our accountability primarily to our children, young people, families and communities, and then to our Scottish Government legislation.
Thank you very much. I realize we have over 300 participants, many from the local level. I'll ask maybe my colleague Amanda if you can speak, because maybe it will be easier to invite some of the local people in Portugal to see if they have any questions. Amanda, can you invite them in Portuguese? Maybe because when we spoke to them, when we met with them, we know they talk a lot. So I think it would be very helpful to hear from them. Amanda?
Pois é, mas a gente gostaria de convidá-los a se sentirem bem à vontade de fazer perguntas que vocês tenham, principalmente também
in bringing your questions, because we know that most of the guests we have here work at the local level. You have contact with families, you have to make integration with services. So any type of doubts you may have in terms of establishing communication, establishing a network, exchange of communication and
perguntas que vocês tenham de como
This
existe
is
a
anything
relação
you
entre
can,
o nível local e nacional, quais são as informações que são enviadas, quais são as linhas orientadoras, como elas se estruturam, que tipo de comunicação efetivamente existe entre o nível nacional e local. Então, assim, estou dando algumas sugestões, mas qualquer coisa que vocês sintam que possa ser útil a vocês no dia a dia do trabalho, por favor, pode clicar no levantar a mão, no ícone que fica aqui embaixo do
raise
Zoom,
your
e a sua
hands
pergunta
in the
será muito
icon,
bem-vinda.
which is
Amanda, peço
here.
desculpa, eu gostava
Well,
muito de fazer
Amanda,
uma
I
pergunta,
would
sendo
like
que eu
to
não tenho
ask
assim
a
câmara
question.
disponível e, portanto, não tenho
However,
como levantar a mão.
there is no way I can raise my hand here in my Zoom.
Joanna, can you repeat? I'm not sure if Kevin heard your question.
Eu não sei se me estão a ouvir, estão-me a ouvir?
Are you listening to me?
Yes, can you repeat?
Okay,
Eu estava a
please.
explicar que queria muito
So
fazer uma
I was
pergunta,
saying
mas eu
that
não
I
tenho o
wanted
ícone
to
disponível
ask
para poder
a
levantar
question,
a
but
mão
I do
para
know of
intervir.
the
Mas uma vez que já me
icon
estão a ouvir, se
to
calhar
raise
vou
the hand.
avançar.
But since you are
Então,
listening to me,
o meu
then
nome
I
é
can
Susana Viana,
go
eu
on.
trabalho
I'm
nos
Susana
serviços
Viana,
centrais do
and I work
Instituto
at
da
the
Segurança Social.
Central
A
Services
minha
of
questão
the
tem muito a ver,
Security
embora sejam
Services.
muito importantes
My
todas estas
question,
questões dos modelos de
well, although
governança
all these
e
models,
das
governance models
relações
are
entre os níveis
important on the
nacionais
relationship between the national
internacionais e
level,
os
the
níveis locais,
international, and the local
eu estava
levels,
particularmente interessada de um
I
aspecto
would
muito
like
importante
to
que foi
know
colocado por uma das
about
colegas que
something which
interviu
was
e
focused
e que tem a ver com
by a
a
colleague of
intervenção
ours,
sensível ao
and it
trauma.
has to do
E este é um
with
aspecto que na dimensão
trauma-sensitive
portuguesa está
intervention,
muito mal
and this
conseguido
is
ainda.
something
É uma
that
preocupação
we
muito grande
haven't
que nós
been able
temos.
to sort it out
Os
in
nossos
terms of
técnicos,
quality.
que são
We
os
are very
gestores de
much
casos, os
concerned
nossos
because our
assistentes sociais,
technicians or our
de uma
case
forma
managers,
geral, não
or
estão ainda muito
they are
cientes
not
desta
yet
questão da
very much
intervenção sensível
aware
ao trauma.
of
A
these
esmagadora maioria destas
trauma-sensitive
famílias
issues. So
carecem de
most
intervenção, passaram por
families
algumas
who
experiências
require
normalmente
intervention have lived through
potencialmente traumatizantes.
experiences
E
which
muitas
are
vezes a intervenção
potentially
dos nossos
traumatic,
colegas
and very often the
inadvertidamente
intervention of our
vem
colleagues
reforçar esses traumas.
unexpectedly
Então nós
only
temos
comes to
investido
reinforce this
nos
trauma.
últimos
So
anos
we have over the
em
last years
formação para os
we've been
profissionais do Instituto da Segurança Social que garanta mais
talking about
uma intervenção,
trying
um
to
modo de atuação
guarantee
que é
more the
sensível
intervention
ao
which
trauma.
is
O que eu gostava de
sensitive to
perceber é
trauma. So
uma
what I
vez
would
que
like to
identificaram,
understand,
os colegas
since
da
you
Escócia
have
identificaram
our
que
colleagues
têm
from Scotland
exatamente esta
identify
intervenção
that you
sensível ao
also have
trauma,
this
qual foi a metodologia que
trauma
utilizaram para
sensitive
garantir que todos os
intervention.
interventores a
How
nível
have
local
you managed
conseguem atuar
to
com
act
este mindset e com
and
esta
this
e
mindset
implementando metodologias
by
que são
implementing
efetivamente sensíveis
methodologies
ao trauma?
which are sensitive to trauma?
So I think the question is about how to implement interventions that are sensitive to trauma when there is trauma at home. Am I correct? I don't know, Amanda, if I got it right. Amanda, can you confirm?
Yes, that is right. I'm talking about trauma-informed care and how
Yes, I think that's correct. So I don't know, Kevin, if you want to address that question or some of our other colleagues.
I mean, I can start to answer the question, but if my other colleagues would like to contribute as well, unfortunately, I'm not hearing the translation of the question, so and my Portuguese isn't up to scratch to answer effectively. But trauma-informed practice is certainly something that we talk about a lot in our local partnership. We try to make sure that our workforce are supported in terms of their approach to trauma-informed practice. There's training, there's awareness raising sessions for staff, which we encourage to staff to do on a multi-agency basis. So there's a shared understanding, and it's not something we do in individual groups. One of our strategic thematic groups is health and well-being, which has a very strong focus on emotional well-being and mental health and that kind of trauma-informed approach. So we try and make sure that it's not only part of our offer to families in terms of our approach, how we implement getting it right for every child, and understanding the context of families and the challenges and the experiences that they bring with them when they engage in our services. But it's also, I think, part of the offer of support to our professionals and our workers and our workforce and our partnerships, that they have the confidence and the competence and also the support when supporting families around traumatic issues and difficult situations, that it's now part of practice rather than something that sits aside. And we try and make sure it's embedded in our philosophy of how we deliver support as a partnership.
I can perhaps come in from the national perspective, building on Kevin's really helpful local example. So we have a national trauma training programme in Scotland, which is being rolled out nationally. And the Office of the Chief Social Work Advisor is doing additional rollout of training across the country. So we have a really clear vision and delivery mechanism at national level, a really clear priority and expectation that trauma-informed and trauma-responsive practice is the expectation of how we do things. So there's those two layers, the national rollout and standards and training, and then the local work that's done. And as Kevin said, a trauma-informed approach is very much part of getting it right for every child. And within the Children's Services Plan, one of the criteria is around embedding getting it right for every child practice, and that involves local areas doing things like local multi-agency training, as Kevin said, self-evaluation, quality assurance and audit, supervision and support to staff, peer feedback. So we have some really good examples, I think, of really excellent local practice, but also a national recognition. We want this to be consistently available across the country, and that needs national standard work as well. We can share some information on the National Trauma Training Programme with colleagues as part of the follow-up.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for your question. Is there someone else with another question? As you can see, we organize this as an opportunity for you. So this is now the time. And if the interpreters could please increase the sound a little bit. Sometimes it was not always so easy to hear. I'm talking to Mira and Teresa. So maybe I will ask a question while you think about some additional questions. I have some questions myself. Is there a process of review of the plan between you at the national level and the local level? Do you have a discussions on the plan? Are you making suggestions? How are the plans being finalized? Maybe, I don't know, Kevin, if you want to say about your interaction on the plans with the national level, I mean, the Scottish level, and Bryony and Edith, on the other hand. The idea was to understand how
I could start, Stefan, and we received in South Lanarkshire, as other local partnerships, received a very helpful bespoke report on behalf of the Scottish Government, analysing and scrutinising our children's services plan, which we were able to share with partners, which we were able to share with our high-level management and our local politicians. Luckily, it was reassuring for us, and we were able to reassure our directorate and our local politicians that our work was where it needed to be. There is always room for improvement, and it was good to get pointers from our Scottish Government colleagues in terms of what they were looking for, that we will factor into our planning process. But it's always very, very useful, and I think you've mentioned already, and my colleagues have mentioned, the national network of children's services planning leads. It's always helpful to take concerns and considerations to that network to share about, our understanding of things and our intention to move forward. So that's as I say, I keep using the word reassuring, but it is a guidance and reassuring at that level that we are interpreting the national guidance and legislation appropriately for our children, our young people and families.
I don't know, Amanda, if you can invite our Portuguese colleagues again to share. We still have a few minutes to share any thoughts or questions or comments. Amanda? Yes, Paula. Go ahead. Paula Lima, please.
Bom dia. Obrigada pela.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity and congratulations for this sharing, which is very important for Portugal. Because guarantee for the child is indeed a world concern, a global concern. I believe that all countries should be involved. However, I would like to know, in accordance with all models that we were given and the several examples, what is it that we have already implemented in Portugal? What are the actions that we have already started, and how? What is the vision? What are the procedures? And this is happening at a governmental level, but also at a local level. What are the actions that we have already implemented? Thank you very much.
If you allow me, thank you very much for the question, Paula, because in fact, this is more like a question for Sonia and Leah and for us, the OECD, because we have now prepared with Amanda and the OECD team a report looking at an assessment of the system in Portugal. And maybe I should give you the floor, Sonia, but I'm thinking maybe at some stage we should share a version of this report in Portuguese with the colleagues, because then they can have a clear idea and vision and understand how we have analyzed the situation in Portugal, because that's the work we have been doing with Amanda and with Horacio and up to now to try to understand the system. Maybe, Sonia, you want to say something?
Muito bem, muito bem.
Sonia, you're muted. Sorry.
Ok, já estamos
Very well. Okay. Today, I think that the Portuguese is a majority here. So I would like to answer by saying that I imagine that Paula represents the local level, and according to the work that the guarantee is developing now, we have paved a way in order to act. The action plan was approved in January 2023. So since then, we have been implementing the guarantee and in accordance with the proposal within the action plan. This action plan has various levels, and we've had the opportunity of talking to you about our experience at a wider level, because when we talk about the national coordination for the guarantee and in a more encompassing context of Portugal, because we also have other entities highly relevant, namely at the national and central level, to promote policies and developing policies directly impacting the children. We can certainly talk about the national system to promote a child, the rights for the children. But when this guarantee appears, is with the focus of focusing on vulnerability and poverty of national children. So there is this action plan, other than including policies which have already been implemented and others that we will be implementing in order to reach the year 2030, meeting our main goal of reducing substantially the number of children at risk of poverty and social risk by applying a governance model which foresees the active collaboration of local powers. And this is why we are here now, with the purpose of building this implementation model for the guarantee. And there has been an application and what we see is that for technical assistance, and the assistance we are obtaining from the OECD teams is to help us build tools allowing us to substantially improve the relationship between the central and the local level, and the true impact on the life circumstances of families, but most of all in children, lies in this proximity relationship according to the specificities and the problematics of each territory. So this is the work that is being developed by the guarantee. So in the first stage, and in order to start this joint work, we have started by accepting the protocols at a local level within the scope of the social network through the partners of the local social security partners, and then they are called in order to participate by signing this protocol between the national coordination and the local points for the guarantee, where we can find all local partners who work at a local level. This around health, education, housing, or many other partners, stakeholders who can be considered important to include in this work. So this is the type of work we are developing. Today, we have 126 local nucleus in 126 municipalities of the country. So we still have a way to go. But at the same time, we are working to implement the monitoring around the implementation and in creating initiatives which can facilitate this work, this proximity work, be it from the level of knowledge of measures that are part of the action plan, whose objective is to reach those persons who are in these territories and the children, and that these measures can reach all of these children. But on the other hand, in terms of the opportunity for us within this plan of drafting a specific diagnosis of the local under the perspective of the guarantee, which is about the promotion of well-being. What are the main barriers that the children in their territories have when they are facing vulnerability or poverty? So these are the barriers which, in a proactive and priority manner, should be the object of intervention according to the needs of each local. And this is where the central local and the local one should work together, because this is how we can reach the best results. So this is the purpose. We know that this is very ambitious, but not because this is an ambition that all of us can be proactive and act preventively in order to promote well-being and equal opportunities for all children. So in Portugal, we cannot allow that a child within a community or school, in a kindergarten, or in any other activities with other local partners may continue to live in need and poverty without us being capable of intervening in such a way to protect this child and promote all the well-being she needs to live and grow and become an adult is prepared for the future. This is the work that we are developing. We already have 126 local points, and we now benefit from this support from the OECD to build tools that will allow us to pave this way, the way which our colleagues from Scotland have shared with us, and I'm very thankful to them. And this shows how we can connect the national and the local levels and this good opportunity of being successful in fighting against child poverty. And since we believe that each case is a case, then we should go down to the child's level while putting the child at the core of our action. And I know that you, Paulo, you certainly play a very important role in direct contact with the children around you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paola and Sonia. I am very conscious that we will have to close our meeting. Sorry, we will have to close our meeting. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
We will have to close our meeting at 1 o'clock. I think I would like to give our Scottish colleagues the opportunity to say a few last words. Kevin, Bryony, and Edith. I don't know if she's still here. I just had one last small question, but maybe you can answer that factually when concluding. We understand that you are doing a very extensive work to publish an annual report to the extent to which the children's services plans have been achieved. Are the same outcomes monitored all across Scotland, or are the outcomes somehow adapted to the circumstances, or can the local unit choose the outcomes on which it is more important for them to report? Can they select the indicators to be monitored based on local needs? That was the last small question, but please keep it short because we have to wrap up at 1 o'clock. Kevin, maybe first.
Okay, I will do. There is a balance, I think, to be struck between our understanding of local need of our families in South Lanarkshire and the well thought out national policy and national priorities. I think we are fortunate in South Lanarkshire, can only speak for South Lanarkshire, that it was fairly easy to find that balance in terms of need. For me, what's really, really important in all that is we can have our plans and our systems and our structures. Below that, what's important is there is one understanding of what needs to happen locally, and we all commit to doing that and working in that way. And in terms of the delivery of that, despite having systems and structures, it's the relationship between those of us who are providing the support and delivering the services and their children and families that's really, really important. And we need to get that right. We need to use our resources as effectively as possible, because unfortunately we do not have an infinite amount of resources. So we need to be very, very honest in terms of what we do and what we don't do. And we need to communicate that with families. And if we get all of that right, then those outcomes, which are really, really clear in our children's services plan, it's a very outcome and improvement focused children's services plan in South Lanarkshire. If we get all of those strands right, we will stand a chance of achieving those aspired outcomes. And the one thing I would say in terms of that integrated approach for how we deliver services, what's really, really important is that our families and our children and young people only need to tell their story once to someone, and we understand that as a partnership. We try and make sure that they don't have to continually talk to and tell their story and make an ask of so many different people before they get all the right support. If they can do it once and we can respond effectively, then as a local partnership, we will be doing a good job.
Thanks, Kevin. I can maybe come in from the national aspect just to say that within the statutory guidance, It looks at what are some of the key national outcomes and the expectations around that. We have our national performance framework, which is very, very high level, but there are also many other national outcomes, for example, around educational attainment and more specific ones around child poverty and mental health. So within the review of the Children's Services Planning statutory guidance that we're doing again now, because we're a new 3-year cycle, we will be making sure that those national outcomes are really clearly articulated within that guidance. But as Kevin said, there is a balance. So there's national outcomes. And in fact, if you look at this slide, I think it's slide 27 that will be shared, you can see that the priorities, the common priorities across all of Scotland's Children's Services Plan are the same as those national priorities. It's children's rights, it's mental health and well-being, it's child poverty. So we're seeing that commonality and that's how it should be, that the local voice should be informing national priority setting. But also there can be more specific local outcomes, and that's absolutely fine. The Children's Services Plan is for that area, so there may be particular areas of focus specific to that geography, and that's how Children's Services Planning is intended to work, to deliver on national outcomes and to address local priorities together.
Thank you very much, Bryony. I realize this is very much our closing part, but I will also want to give the floor in closing to Eilif McCraith, if you want to offer some final comments or reflections.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Stefan. I don't have a lot to add to what Kevin and Bryony have already said, but just to say that thank you so much again for the opportunity to come along and speak to you all about getting it right for every child. It's very much an approach that was informed by international understandings of childhood well-being, but also we do believe that there's a lot that other countries can learn from that approach. It's been an approach that's been in place for nearly 20 years. And while we still work to make sure that it's a fully embedded approach across services, we know that approach that you've all been talking about as well today, of that integrated approach to delivering improved outcomes for young people. When services are working together to deliver that whole system approach, it does create that more seamless experience for children and families who are looking for support. And as Kevin says, it should feel for families as though they only have to tell their story once to get the right support at the right time. And that's all really I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I realize you have been on this journey for 20 years, and Leah and Sonia have embarked in it for just a few years now. So it takes a long time, and they still have many more years in Portugal so that they can improve and develop. And thank you very much. We have to close really at 1 o'clock. I don't know if Sonia or Leah want to say a final word to thank or close the session.
Stefan, eu penso que já foi tudo dito, no sentido apenas agradecer, obviamente.
Stefan, I think all have been said, but I would like to acknowledge the colleagues from Scotland and congratulate them for all the work they have been developing. And we hope to have new opportunities for sharing our experience with you, especially when it comes to our major opportunities and in regard to the work we are developing in Portugal, and that we hope that they are impactful in the quality of life of all of our children. And it is also important to thank the whole OECD team, Stefan and all, and also seize this opportunity to say that our goal is to carry out 3 workshops. This was the first. Tomorrow we will have the second, and we would like to invite all who are attending this meeting today that you can follow us tomorrow for an also interesting topic which has to do with monitoring, and we are still coming to establish a 3rd date for another workshops. So these workshops have to do with the 3 main axes of this technical assistance program. So thank you very much to all of you, and have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Kevin, Bryony, Eilif, and everyone, Gronia, Horacio, Sonia, and Leah. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Obrigada.